Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Norwood Planning Board. My name is Rob Bamber and I serve as chair of the board. The quorum is present and the meeting is therefore called to order. Tonight's proceedings will go as follows. Public hearings will be opened by reading the legal notice into the record. The applicant will have the opportunity to make their presentation to the board. The board members may then ask questions of the applicant. Once the board has concluded its questioning, I will open the hearing to the public for comment. All members of the public in attendance who wish to ask a question or make a comment must wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking. Once recognized, be prepared to state your name and address for the record and speak loudly for all to hear. All questions and comments must be directed through the chair, and I will call upon board members and/or the applicant as needed to respond. The board will then move into a period of deliberation where it will determine whether or not it closes the public hearing and moves to a vote, or continues the public hearing to a later date. A few quick reminders before we begin. We request that participants in this evening's meeting remain respectful to attendees, board members, applicants, and staff. Please be concise in your comments and presentations to ensure that sufficient time is available for others to comment and for the board to deliberate. Please turn your phones to silent and refrain from side conversations so that all participants in the meeting can hear. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda is public hearing, special permit and site plan review, 699 Washington Street, Maki and Maki. On behalf of JKM Property 4 LLC for renovation of an empty bank building for mixed commercial residential use. This is their representative here.
The applicant's attorney submitted a request on late in the day on Friday to withdraw the application without prejudice.
Okay.
The chairman will make a motion to accept the applicant's withdrawal without prejudice.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, one down.
Next up, we have signed site plan review, 599 Washington Street, Umi Nails. Is there someone here to speak on that?
Yes. Hi, my name is Vicky. I'm the site contractor.
Do you have a presentation for us, or?
The sign is non-illuminated, so it's a 1-inch aluminum cabinet with a gold lettering and a gold border. So the lettering is made by the PVC, painted in gold.
Okay, and this complies with our sign bylaw. There's no relief here. Does anyone have any questions from the board? Yes, Mrs. Holmwood.
The board may wish to encourage the Is that me?
No, it's a feedback through his
Yeah.
speaker.
Encourage the applicant to consider maintaining and reskinning the awnings in order to provide pedestrian relief from shade. What does that mean?
So currently, the former business that was located at this location, so right now there's a green awning style sign that lists the business name. The applicant here is proposing to remove that awning and replace it with a flat wall sign. It is, as proposed, it complies with the bylaw. The note from the assistant director was to encourage, consideration of refacing the awning. We have more awnings increasingly throughout the central business district, and they do provide certain pedestrian amenities, as mentioned. So that's a suggestion, but not a requirement. The sign as proposed does comply.
Okay. Well, I'll ask.
And I apologize to the applicant. I did mute the applicant just to allow for the feedback situation.
Okay.
Okay.
But that's the only reason.
May I ask if the applicant would be interested in saving the awning and refacing it with the new letters? Is that something you would give consideration to? Oh,
He's muted.
He's muted. Yes, no?
You can't unmute him.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, the business owner, she doesn't want the awning.
Okay,
There you go.
all righty.
Anyone else have any comments, anything to add?
You're looking for a motion to approve?
I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion to approve and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes. Welcome to town. Good luck.
Thank you, have a good night, thank
Thank
you,
you.
bye-bye.
Bye. All right, we have another signed site plan review, 54 Cottage Street, hair therapy. Do we have a representative for hair therapy?
Yes, it's me, Priscilla Silva.
Hi, go ahead.
So we are applying for the sign of our space. It's a hair and a aesthetics place, and there is no sign there right now. It's empty, and we have the drawings there with how it's going to look like if it's approved.
Okay. Does anyone, Joe?
We may have lost an awning on Washington Street, but we're gonna gain one here, or two, I think. That's good news. I think it looks good, it must, it fits and everything, and no problem there.
I think. Any other comments?
No.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a motion? To
Second.
approve. Second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Vote carries. Congratulations, welcome to town, good luck,
Thank you.
thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Good night.
Alright. So next up, we have a continued public hearing, definitive subdivision application, Fales Ave extension, review proposed road extension for adequate access, continued from June 10th.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Hearn Jr. of Kellerman and Cabral on behalf of the applicant. Since we were last with you 2 weeks ago, I think by now you've hopefully seen the plan that we had submitted a couple of weeks ago. Also, I submitted last week a list of proposed waivers related to the normal, what would be applicable in subdivision review, subdivision approval. I think there have been some communications. We got Ms. Dixon, on Friday afternoon, we got Ms. Dixon's memo, and we also got some other comments, Mr. Ryan, I think. And I'm happy to address those as best I can. The plan that we've given you, dated June 5th, that's the revision date. That is an update that was prepared in response to comments at a prior meeting with you and a follow-up meeting with Mr. Ryan. So that was intended to incorporate those comments, and we believed at that time that that adequately showed the features of what we're proposing to construct for this adequate access matter on this existing lot at 50, what's called, referred to as 50 Fales Ave. It's lots 49 and 50 at Fales Ave. Mr. Ryan issued a memo that was provided to us on Friday afternoon. We've reviewed that. Most of what, according to contractor Mr. O'Neill, who's here, most of that is either already in the plan that we've given you or is of the type of work that we would be providing when we do a full instrument survey to respond to and to incorporate Mr. Ryan's various comments in his latest memo. I believe the building inspector had raised some questions in an email that was provided the other day, and I think the response on that is that we believe we will be able to demonstrate when we go, assuming we get through here, go to apply for a building permit, that we will have adequate access. And if he insists upon 90 feet of pavement, which might be more than some of you, I thought, wanted based upon the prior discussions, we could do that. I would suggest that if we do get through the adequate access with something less than 90 feet of pavement, that you authorize us to extend that pavement in some fashion if the building inspector insists upon that. There is a question about how you interpret frontage, and frontage is designed to show that somebody has adequate access from a lot to the street and from the street to the lot, both for safe travel and for emergency vehicles. That's vested in this board to determine what is adequate access. That's really your decision. So Mr. Pelletier, though, on his part, is concerned with zoning requirements, dimensional requirements, and they're actually separate requirements. So the frontage does touch upon that issue of, is there an adequate roadway to get in and out of a site? We have 100 feet of width, 100 feet of frontage on a paper street, and if it becomes necessary, I suppose we could extend what we're showing, which I don't have the exact measurements, but I think pretty close to 90 feet from the lot line to the end of the cul-de-sac right now. And then what he's told me in his latest email, which I believe I forwarded after I saw the comments on Friday afternoon, forwarded to the planning department, was that if I can show him we've got 90 feet of pavement, he's satisfied. So, but that, again, the zoning issue when we go for a building permit, not really related to adequate access. I do understand that the fire department, from a comment we saw in a memo, not from the fire department, but the fire department was interested in a greater width than the 22 feet that you folks had told us would be satisfactory. The other adequate access plans that I can think of that have been done, Cherrywood is the one that sticks out in my mind, has 20 feet of pavement and a dead end. We're proposing 22 feet with a small cul-de-sac. So we believe what is there is adequate. The existing roadway has, where it ends now, we're going to build off an angle off that, is 26 feet. So we think, though, that 26 feet is more than is necessary for a single lot. And again, we've designed it based upon our prior discussions with the board. So there are some open questions there. An ongoing question has been the question of a survey, and we had, in our prior discussions and in the list of proposed conditions that I submitted last week, and that hopefully you have in your packets, I submitted that in view of this being not the creation of a new lot, it's an existing lot and has been for 102 or 104 years, and because of the cost involved and the uncertainty that, and the fact that it's not a real subdivision, but we're calling it one simply to have a mechanism for dealing with it, that we have been proposing to do a survey to the satisfaction of the town engineer, who's the one who is most familiar with what those surveys show, both in terms of layout and materials to be used in the various structures for drainage and everything else, and road construction. To do that survey after we get approval here. Otherwise, it's a big expense for our clients a young couple just want to build a house on this existing single-family lot. It's a big expense without knowing what they're going to do. It's not a subdivision. You have a subdivision, we can see a survey, you're dealing with land that's never been surveyed before. This was surveyed and was signed off by the town's Board of Survey, a predecessor to this board, when the plan was filed and recorded in the Registry of Deeds. So it's a little bit different situation. We're asking for some leeway on that. We would do a survey before we pull the building permit, before construction begins, to give Mr. Ryan all the detail that he's referring to in his memo, some of which we already have, and some of which we'd be able to supply after we do survey. And Mr. Ryan has said, I think that that's really a decision for this board as to when a survey would be required or whether it could be waived at this stage of the proceedings, subject to being provided later before construction and begins and building permits are issued. The roadway width and the roadway length, again, we're going off of what we were told previously by the board, and we submit that for a single-family house, this roadway is adequate. It's larger, wider than what's been approved on some of the other adequate access plans in the past. There may be other points that are coming up, but that's what comes to my mind having reviewed those papers that were supplied to us on Friday when we got the agenda and all that. We appreciate getting those. Some of them we would have liked sooner, but we appreciate getting them and having a chance to look at them. So, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to discuss it further and to hear your comments and questions that you might have. And Mr. O'Neill can answer many of the technical ones because he's the guy who's going to put the shovel in the ground and all the equipment in the ground to build the house. He's got a great deal of experience in that. So that's where we are for now.
Thank you. Shall I open up, or does anyone want to comment?
I just have a
Sure, Joe.
question. I was able to take a trip down there yesterday just to look it over, and I noticed how the street comes down at an angle and then it just drops, and it goes down a little bit more, and there's a sewer down there, sewer cover. And I can see what the neighbors were talking about with the how it had flooded down there and so on and so forth. Is that land going to be built up at all, or is it just going to?
We plan our work. We plan to do the work only within our lot and the roadway in front of our lot.
I'm only talking about the roadway. Yeah, I understand that.
In front of our lot.
Yes.
Ed, do you want to speak to the?
We'll have to bring some clean material in there and bring it up. I would say that the grade would probably come up without having contours done. My engineer will come out, do post contours and then pre contours at the end of it, showing them how the lot's going to finish up, how it's going to run into the roadway, and of course how we're going to handle our stormwater management, which would be there'll be drainage provided on the lot itself to take care of our any driveway and gutters. There'll be a structure for that, and also we'll be taking care of the runoff to the roadway. So all those contours will come in, so that will be done during engineering. But it will all be approved. Well, Mark has to approve it. He has to agree with the plan.
The plan with the revision date of June 5th shows infiltration to be constructed on the lot by the back right corner looking from the street of the house, and also within the roadway we would have infiltration leaching chambers there. So we're trying to capture whatever comes off of our lot. We can't do anything about really what's been going on around there, but what we're concerned about is controlling what may change as a result of construction on our lot. That's why we have these leaching chambers in there. And they're designed, I think, to respond to Mr. Ryan's earlier comments about how much he wants in there and how much what the capacity will be.
I also have a question on the utilities. What kind of utilities? I know that they're at the end of the road there. What will they have to bring in as far as, is it gas, electricity, water?
It'll be all three, yes.
And where will it come in from?
It's actually
Fales?
It was shown on the plan. I talked to the electrical, Norwood Electric, and we're gonna siphon off the last pole and go underground to the house to provide power for that house.
And would they have to remove a lot of trees along?
We're gonna keep it in the right of way. We'll keep the services in the right of way. So we're only planning to clear what has to be cleared to create the roadway and and develop the lot. All other trees are gonna remain.
And the water and sewer service are shown on the plan. It's coming in off of the paved area of Fales Ave, off to the left on the plan there.
You see W and S.
Yeah, that's for sewer, for water.
So that's where those come in. The sewer service will come out of the house and connect to the sewer service. There are some existing manholes, and we're very mindful of what is there, what we have to be careful about. That's been discussed by Mr. O'Neill with Mr. Ryan. And you can see the D for drainage going into the leaching chambers in the roadway, along with the proposed catch basin. We show where the water service goes into the house and all that. So that is shown on the plan. That's been worked out. It makes sense, we believe, for this project, as well as in terms of the town's concerns. And the electric, as Mr. O'Neill said, will bring that in from the last pole and put it underground.
And the sewer that is there where the road would be going now, does that have to be lifted up at all?
The sewer?
Yeah.
No. We'll go down and get it. We'll dig a trench, and then we'll connect the existing sewer in the roadway. And according to Mr. Ryan's profile, he wants to clean out at the top. He specified the PVC type, the pipe he wants me to use, so of course we'll follow his direction on the design.
It's quite a drop from where the street ends, I mean,
Yeah.
and then the sewer there is kind of low.
Right.
With the sewer, I was wondering if the street went in, the new part that you're gonna be putting in, would that have to come up to meet the
Pipe,
road?
No, we'll fill over with clean material. The specifications for the roadway with bank run gravel, processed gravel, asphalt, so we'll use all clean material to raise the grade. But as you see, that road comes down, and like you noticed, it drops down, so we'll be building that up a little bit to be able to handle the runoff. And we'll capture all the water on the lot and the roadway, and we'll be then to a leaching basin, and then actually, Mr. Ryan has given us permission to have any overflow will go into the stormwater. There's stormwater pipe in the town, for the town. So there'll be no flooding, even if on a major storm event, even after the modeling is done, the overflow will go into the town stormwater. There's a detail on the second sheet of the page showing that.
So sorry, Joe. When you look at this area, Washington Street's high. Fales Ave is high-ish, going downhill. There's a gully between Fales Ave and Washington Street, and they all converge on this property. But you can't tell because we don't have a survey. But I think if you're going to bring a driveway across the front of that, you're going to be raising up the grade 4 feet, 5 feet, something like that, 3 feet.
I wouldn't know till the contours are done, but it will all be designed and engineered according to Mark Ryan's specifications. So it won't be built unless Mark approves it. And it has to be engineered. Drainage calculations, deep pits have to be done to make sure we can handle. In other words, the subgrade material, when you dig a deep hole, it has to be able to percolate in the ground.
Right,
We have to do perks. We have to do all of that before we start. And Mark has to approve it and witness it.
That's what I'm concerned on, because I went down there and it's heavy packed mud, dirt. It's obviously wet. The vegetation is out of control because it's full of water. It does drop off.
The engineering would have to be backed up, that we'll be able to handle the existing runoff off the lot and on our roadway that we're gonna create. and calculations will be given to Mark, and he's gonna review it before anything could be done.
Aside from that, does anyone, Mrs. Homewood?
So basically, we're the chicken or the egg. We're going to do a survey after we give an approval, or we're not going to give an approval until we have a survey. Am I correct, Brad?
Right, we've asked for a survey.
Okay.
Twice.
Right, so according to Mr. Ryan's memo, town engineer approves everything before I replied that the final approval comes from the planning board, not me. So if we're concerned that we need a survey, I mean, we're going around and around in circles. We're going to get a survey before a shovel goes in the ground.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't meet all the criteria of the pages that we have, he won't be issued a building permit, correct?
Actually, we won't be able to start until Mark reviews the plan we give him, and he approves it, and then we can apply for a building permit. So we can't even start until we provide him with the proper engineering that he reviews and approves, or we don't start.
So as a board, we've decided that we have adequate access, correct?
That's part of what we're deciding.
Mr. Chairman, that's really what adequate access is about, under 3.6.2. Standards of adequacy. They refer to the rules and regulations refer to, I'll read it, ways shall normally be considered to provide adequate access to proposed lots not constituting a subdivision. That's what we have here. Only if having a paved, they left out the word, but I believe it's width of at least 20 feet. We propose that. 22 feet, in fact, 150 feet stopping site distance. That's not an issue here, the way this road is. Drainage assuring uninterrupted access. That means from the road onto the lot and back. And other design and construction features which, in the judgment of the planning board, similarly provide for basic movement and safety. That's the issue. That's what adequate access is about. And that's what all the decisions have been that are made on this issue, in my recollection, in the past 15, 20 years. There are other things that people would like, and we're not ignoring the need to control the water on the site and to build a house that is going to be adequate in terms of construction and all that. But we're focusing here on constructing on the paper street, on the right-of-way, an adequate roadway that you folks will sign off as adequate in terms of width, stopping site distance, access to and from the lot, and then, of course, dealing with drainage that assures uninterrupted access. So you don't want the road washing away or the ability to come and go from the lot to be washed away. We don't want that either. So that's really what we're dealing with here in this sort of hybrid situation.
Yes, Ernie.
I think that because we are using subdivision control as a mechanism, we're really getting into the weeds here. We're here for adequate access. And I'm going to go back to just a couple of quick questions, refresh from 2 meetings ago. Originally, you asked for a 20-foot pavement, right? And we said we're going to shrink it and go to 22, right?
Correct.
And we've done that. And I'm reading the building inspector's comments, and I don't think he's, at least I don't, unless there's something else, I don't think he's asking for 90 feet of pavement. I think he's asking for 90 feet of frontage. Now, we've done many plans over the years where we have shown frontage, right-of-way, cul-de-sacs, and not made anyone build them. I can think of one right off the top of my head. I'm sure Attorney Hearn might have been involved with it. It was Dr. Fishman's property.
No, I wasn't.
No, but anyway, we made them show the right-of-way in with a cul-de-sac, and the frontage was on the paper cul-de-sac, but we only required them to put 2 driveways in. We didn't make them build the whole thing. But it's on the plan, it shows the right-of-way. And I think that's probably what Gary's looking for, and I think you've met that. You have 100 feet of frontage. Now, as far as the survey, are there no pins out there? This thing's 100 years old, right? There's probably no pins out there now?
No, there are no current, this is like any existing lot.
Yeah,
It's shown on a
there's
plan.
no boundary markers or anything?
And, you know, when we build, we'll be out there making sure we know where they are, so we can locate the house and make sure we're not doing work outside of our lot. We're not interested in doing work outside of our lot, except to the extent we have to do it within the.
So I'm probably
right-of-way.
the outlier here, but I would think that you show adequate access. I think that's why we're here. All the things that, I'm sorry, the engineer, I forget your name, I'm sorry.
Ed O'Neill.
Ed O'Neill.
Just for the record, he's not the engineer on the matter. We
No,
have
I'm sorry.
Meisner and Brem on that, but he's
Okay,
the
but
contractor who's
the contractor,
handling it.
that all of these things that you say have to happen before you can do anything. You have to get Mark Ryan's sign off. He's not going to allow it.
Exactly.
He's not, you know, if Gary wants, and I understand if there's no pins out there or resurvey, and, you know, if you totally, what you said, you understand that you're going to have to do it for Gary to give you a building permit. So, and I don't know if you want to make that a condition, that these have to be met, but I think we've kind of really, I think because we're going under the subdivision control, we're kind of in over our skis here a little bit on some of this, that the engineer and the building inspector will handle. We've done adequate accesses all over town, and I haven't seen one like this. And it may be a different circumstance, but another one was North Street, the extension.
Yeah.
Was adequate access back there, and we just required a paper cul-de-sac. And he didn't require the builder, he just built his driveway, basically. And so I think we're there. I mean, I don't know, the other board members may feel differently, but, you know, I totally understand that you gotta get Mark's sign off and you gotta get Gary's sign off before you can proceed. And we're looking at adequate access.
Mark stipulated that we have to do perks, so we're gonna get out there and dig
Yeah.
perks and make sure everything percolates as far as the calculations for the runoff. So, I mean, that's something he's gonna review.
And I don't know if we make that a condition that all, you know, plans have to be signed out, you know, future work has to be signed off by the town engineer or building inspector, whoever is the authority of that is part of the project.
That's reasonable.
Does, but, I mean, as far as the adequate access, I see no problem with it. And that's just my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, Attorney Aaron.
Ms. Pachkowski referred to North Ave, and I represented folks who owned a couple of old lots up at the end of North Ave. And they were able to build simply by showing they could get a driveway onto the improved section that the other person, the original developer, who was required to get the adequate access, did. They had existing lots. They just had to show they could get onto it. And, you know, this is a situation where we need to show that our existing lot can get onto a roadway that is sufficient by your standards. We have no intention of not satisfying Mr. Pelletier's concerns, and my correspondence back and forth with him, I think I've tried to clarify some things, and he sent me something on Monday, the 17th, that he said, show me 90 feet of road between the two side lot lines, and it complies. And at one point, he was saying he needed to see roadway right up to the edge of the lot, but I sent him a note, and I said, well, that's not really, none of our lots actually touches the pavement. There's always a right-of-way that's wider than the actual paved roadway. So the point is, it's why we all have driveways coming out, and they end up crossing technically into right-of-ways, and crossing parts of right-of-ways, which may be private, as this is, or public, and all over the place. We have private driveways that are built to cross where the town has made takings. I mean, keep in mind, it may be relevant to some considerations, that under the statute, my clients, assuming they're able to buy the place, will own at least to the center line of this roadway. I mean, that's part of their property. And there's an argument they may own to the other side, because I'm not sure that the lots directly opposite are part of the same subdivision. But, you know, we're focusing on a right-of-way that's never been built in this section. And how do we provide adequate access? And how do we deal with the drainage? And most of the time, you know, we deal with Mr. Ryan on these things, and we need to satisfy him, because he's the engineer. He knows a heck of a lot more about it than I do. And he certainly advises you folks. I had given the planning department last week a draft list of conditions. I don't know if you have that. It bears a date of, it was revised on the 18th, which is Tuesday. I sent it over on Tuesday, knowing that Wednesday was a holiday and town hall would be closed. Do you have that in front of you?
Oh. That was distributed in your packets.
Yes.
Sorry, was that distributed to the members?
Yes. Starts with instrument survey.
Right, it shows a revision date of the 18th. I have a couple of extra copies if you don't have, maybe one extra copy, if you don't have it.
I have it here. I'm not sure.
Ms. Holman, do you have it?
I probably do, but I can't find it. I have,
Might be the same safe
Yeah.
place a lot of my things are.
thank you.
So, Ms. Dixon suggested, and she's reminded me that she had previously suggested that we should give you a list of waivers. If we're treating this as a subdivision, what waivers from the subdivision rules and regulations do we think are appropriate? And they're almost too numerous, considering that this is an existing lot, and we're only building one house, and we're not building a subdivision roadway and all that. So I took the approach of calling out in numbers 1 through 7, the points that respond to the comments we've heard here and the comments we've heard from Mr. Ryan about doing a survey and why we do it after the fact, if we got approval. The roadway, where it's to be extended, is shown on the plan that is revised June 5th. We were asked to put a curb cut for pedestrian and bicycle access. We're happy to do that. Somebody tells us where they want it, and we've suggested would be determined by the town engineer. Nail down that the roadway will be 22 feet, as discussed previously with this board, and then the details about the numbers 5 and 6 deal with the leaching areas, leaching structures, as Mr. Ryan directed Mr. O'Neill following their meeting on May 31st. And then the last one is, number 7 rather, is everything's going to be done to the satisfaction of the town engineer based on the approved plan prior to the issuance of any certificate of occupancy. So we're doing the work. He still has the final sign-off. And then the last one is everything else that's in the subdivision rules and regulations, we ask for a waiver on, because we don't believe that they would be relevant. Right? I mean, otherwise we'd be probably up to 100 different waivers that would be not efficient.
If I could go real quick.
Yep, yep.
On the waivers, just to go through this, instrument survey, number 1. You're asking for a waiver there, but we're in between a rock and a hard place here. The fire department, town engineer, and building commissioner have all requested this survey in response to this waiver request. The planning board needs this information to render a decision, basically. Number 2, slope curb cut. We agree on the slope curb cut.
That's number 3, you mean?
Number 3, yes. Number 2, this is a draft condition of approval that would not be necessary if the approved plans are based on a stamp survey. Right off the bat, see, instrument survey, the fire department, town engineer, and building commissioner are all asking for that before we make a final decision. So I'm not exactly sure how I'm supposed to ignore that statement there. They're the experts. I hold them with high regard, If they're saying they want a survey before we render a decision, why would we go? I mean, does anyone,
Well,
I can respond to that, but
And-
I don't want to interrupt people either.
okay. I don't have what you're reading, or do I?
You do.
right.
It's part
Well,
of
this is
the
Mr. Hearns, right? but-
memorandum.
Yes.
Yes, but as, according to Mr. Ryan's, I mean, again, it feels like the chicken or the egg. I agree with Ernie that it's all gotta, I mean, if everybody wants it, we're gonna do the survey, but they don't want to do the survey, we're stuck. We're stuck. And if they can't do anything, if we approve it based on all of these conditions, then,
So if I may. Number 4, 22-foot roadway. The fire department and town engineer have requested a 26-foot roadway. I know we already talked about this, but again, if the fire department and the town engineer are making a request, they're the experts. I cannot ignore that.
May I speak to it?
Please, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you've just mentioned the building inspector, the fire department, and the town engineer. The only one of those that really has anything to do with the issues that are before you in terms of what a survey might show is the town engineer. The building inspector has nothing to do with really with adequate access at this point. His concern is zoning compliance, and then compliance with the building code, zoning code and building code. That's not before us right now, only adequate access. So by the time we go to him with our proposal, we will have had a survey done to show him exactly where the corners are, where the house is going and all that. But at this stage, you know, adequate access is not his brief. It's your brief, and the town engineer weighs in on it and has given us instructions on that. The fire department the same way. The fire department has nothing to do with the survey. They would like a wider road. They always do. Every project, they want a wider road. But this board historically has approved for these types of matters 20-foot roadways. Ours is 22 feet, proposed 22 feet. Based upon our discussions with this board, why put down more asphalt than is necessary to access one house? The idea that making it a little bit wider is going to make easier access for the fire department, it's still not going to be big enough for what they'd like to have. I mean, they'd like full cul-de-sacs, wide enough to drive a ladder truck all the way around. You can't get that everywhere in this town, and this board has not required that in the past. So I go back to my comment a moment ago. The only one who really needs a survey in terms of the technical aspects of this, other than what you folks decide one way or another, is Mr. Ryan, because he needs to see where we're going to put things and what we're going to, in terms of the roadway construction, in terms of the drainage, in terms of the materials, the existing contours and the proposed contours. And I'm not saying you folks shouldn't see that, but much of this you delegate to the town engineer anyway to advise you as to what's appropriate or not. So I guess that's a way to say that, with all due respect, this is not the building commissioner's issue. His comes later. And the fire department doesn't really look at surveys. That's not their work to do. The survey is more important for contours, for drainage, for roadway construction. Width of the roadway is an issue, but that's your decision, not the fire department's. They can advise. Sometimes they get more. They don't always get what they want. In the past, you've done 20-foot roadways to allow single lots to be created. In this case, you're not even creating a single lot. It already exists. We just want to build on it. So that's, we haven't heard from them, by the way, and I'm not saying they didn't say something to the planning department, but we've never heard from the fire department on this in recent. Mr. Ryan told us he was going to talk to the fire department after he met with Mr. O'Neill. But we haven't really heard back other than this last minute stuff of they want 26 feet. And I thought Mr. Ryan was okay with the roadway, But as he said, it's ultimately, in his memo, it's ultimately this board's decision, what you want, what you're going to require, and what you want by way of roadway construction.
Joe?
On the 22 feet, I think I think that would be sufficient in this particular situation because it's the end of there's only one house there, it's not going any further. The only other thing is the 90 feet. I just want to verify, when you're talking about the 90 feet, in this drawing, that would be the very tip of the radius of, is that where the 90 feet would, you'd measure it up against the
If-
frontage of the lot?
From his correspondence, I think what Mr. Pelletier believes he needs to see is, show me 90 feet of road between the two side lot lines, and it complies. Now, that's his thinking about frontage. But another way to look at this is, we have frontage, we expect that when this is said and done, we will have frontage on a way having, in the opinion of the planning board, sufficient width and drainage and methods of construction to provide adequate access. That's really the test. And there are various lots that may or may not have the roadway built all the way across them. We can build 90 feet of pavement from lot line to some point, but we don't want to do 100 feet. It's not necessary. Even
I'm only
less
talking
than-
about the 90 feet.
Hmm?
I'm talking about the 90 feet from
Yeah.
the beginning. And if we were to use this map here, the plans here, the 90 feet would go from
the
the
side
far
lot.
left as we're looking at it,
Yeah,
and it would go to where the circular point is, without actually having to go up and touch it. I'm just saying the 90 feet.
Right.
That would suffice it.
doesn't have to
Suffice.
touch the actual lot line.
All right, then that's, I could deal with that too.
Mr. Chairman, on the 26 feet,
Yes.
I can't remember when we've required 26 feet on a roadway in a long time. I think, I could be wrong, but I believe the 15 houses on Prospect Street were 24-foot roadway. if I'm-
24 or no more than 26. I can't remember the
Yeah.
exact decision on Prospect
But
Road.
on-
That was for 19 lots. of subdivision.
To extend the street to make a 26-foot roadway is, yes, it's great and all that, but it's not necessary, in my opinion. 22 would work.
You would recommend 22?
I'd stay with 22. We have done 20s. Coolidge, not Coolidge,
Cherrywood.
Cherrywood, but I'm thinking the street that was messed up, they were supposed to go 22 when they went to 20, off in Manhattan, I forget the name of the street, Coolidge, maybe it was Coolidge. I think 22 to extend the one house is fine. I don't think that 26 is,
Can I ask the rest of the board if 22?
I am in favor of 22, and we've done it many times. I don't, it's one house.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay. There's one.
And, may I?
Yes, Debbie, please.
A question that the building inspector, is this a common thing that he's been asking for road widths before? This seems like something new, that the building inspector is,
Maybe just giving some-
right,
Chairman.
but again, ultimately, we've done narrower roads. We've been, for years, we've been saying we were gonna cut down on blacktop and we're overheated and so on and so forth, so I'm in favor of staying with the 22. I also, it seems like nobody wants to make a decision on this because it's neither fish nor fowl, it's not a subdivision, and so it's something in between, and,
I'm pretty clear.
yeah, I am
No, we
also,
just
I don't know
all
why we're
agreed on
stuck.
this, so there is
Okay.
our decisions, and if we go through the list, we probably
Okay,
can see where everyone stands on this.
okay.
Sarah, do you want to jump in right now, or do you want to go through the list of?
Yeah, so, I mean, just to clarify on process, the reason why this is before the board as a definitive subdivision application, even though this is universally acknowledged, there's no subdivision of land occurring here, is that it's the closest available mechanism that we have to get this question before the board, to be able to grant some sort of an approval. And that was the advice of town council when my office solicited his opinion on how to proceed on this. You know, as I've shared with you, the response was either it should be a definitive subdivision application request with waiver requests for anything that doesn't, you know, apply, or, you know, it doesn't get before the board. So here we are. I think procedurally, it would be in everybody's best interest to keep doing what you're doing, go through this list of waiver requests. I would take votes on each of them. I think you do have the discretion to offer those waivers if you feel that the language in the rules regarding adequate access, which I did cut and paste just to make sure it was convenient for you in my memo. You do have the authority to grant those waivers. There are cases where the rules require that you consider, you know, movement and safety. It does mention drainage, so it's within your right to kind of weigh all these waiver requests. And if you feel that the basic conditions that the rules require are satisfied with the waiver request, whether it be for the actual design, you know, a 22-foot versus 26-foot roadway, or about the level of information that you feel comfortable with being provided to you in order to make that decision, whether or not you have a survey. That is within your discretion, and you can make that, but I think it would be in everybody's best interest to kind of formally go through one by one, take a vote on each, and give the applicant some clarity on what exactly might be needed in order to continue making progress on this application. I think it's regrettable we've gotten to the third kind of instance of this hearing without having that organized discussion, but I think that's probably just the most efficient way to move forward. So I would also add, you should take a formal vote on the request for a fee waiver as well. That wasn't included in the request, but the request was made via email when this application first came in. Just to kind of give you an overview, I did grant like a preliminary request just to get it through, because our system doesn't allow an application to proceed. But it was subject to board approval. So you should look at the amount that was charged versus, you know, what the rules would stipulate, and make a determination that it is kind of, there's a nexus between the amount of resources required to process this application and what was charged. You can go higher or lower, or keep it the same, but that warrants your consideration as well. Again, just in fairness to the applicant, before we proceed any further, it would be good to have some clarity on that.
Okay. If I could go through the list. So we
Sounds like a
just,
good idea.
yeah, well, when in Rome. How about we start with the roadway? I know we just talked about that. So do I have a motion to go with a 22-foot roadway?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second, 22-foot roadway. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Sarah,
Yes.
since Brian's not here, do I step in or no?
Only for special permits.
Okay, no problem. Just want to make sure
But
that's clear.
certainly continue to share your input.
Mr. Chairman, some of those are straight out of Mr. Ryan's recommendations. You know, we just took the language. I think number 5 is, number 6 also. Do you have a copy of this or not?
No, I don't have a
That was the, number 5 being the leaching structures shall have a volume below the outlet pipe of the new roadway area.
Yeah, that's all.
Times 1/2 inch.
Right, that's all his
And number
direction.
6 was his direction.
That's
That's
correct.
not
Yeah,
waiver.
so those two were straight out of
Just a
Mr.
condition.
Ryan's recommendations.
Okay.
And we're prepared to build those.
Let's go to the next easy one. Number 3, sloped curb cut for pedestrians and bicycles.
We'd fight that one to the
I'll
death.
make the
No,
motion.
that's easier.
That's a
Make
good one,
motion,
right?
to
Yeah.
Approve that one.
I have a
Second.
motion to approve and a second for a slope curb cut for bikes and people. Do I have
Yeah, first and a second.
first and a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right.
Thank you.
There's 2. Well, might as well go for it. Instrument survey prior to approval of this board. Do I have a motion?
I'm going to make a motion to approve, and I stated my reasons earlier. I don't have to restate them, but basically, they're going to have to do that moving forward. I'm okay with them doing it after they get adequate access. They can go to the town engineer, they can show him the survey, show the building inspector wants to see it, he can, but I have no problem with them after the fact, if that's the right word. I don't think that it's required for us to give them adequate access. I think it's required for Mr. Ryan and the contractor and their engineer to work it out and have it done, and they know they have to have it done because they can't proceed without it. But I don't think it's absolutely necessary for us to approve it. So I'm going to make the motion to approve that waiver.
To approve,
and number
not
one.
having to do,
Number one,
okay, yep. Do I have a
Knowing
second?
that they will have to do it.
knowing
later.
that they're going to have to do it, they're going to have to do it anyway.
It says.
We're not asking them not to do it, it's just they're going to do it as a second step.
Right,
The
it does say.
applicant's proposing here is that they're requesting a waiver of that standard process, but also proposing that this would be a draft condition of approval. This would be incorporated into the final.
Right, we
approval
expect
of
all,
the access.
some of these are for our guidance, and we'd reflect them in the final plans, but we're happy to have these as conditions of any approval. And to the Mr. Rachikowski's comment, we're proposing that we would do the survey, submit it to the town engineer for his review and approval before construction begins. So before we put shovels in the ground, other than, of course, the shovels necessary to do any perk tests or anything like that, test pits or anything, whatever he directs. But we would not be able to start any construction until Mark Ryan sees an actual survey showing existing and proposed pre- and post-construction and blesses it, says, yeah, that's what I want to see, and you, and tells us you're okay. That, he's the guy who's going to review that anyway. It's just, that's an expense that if we didn't have adequate, Ms. Holman mentioned chicken and egg. Because this is such a different situation we're in from the normal, either, it's not A&R, it's sort of A&R with conditions, but it's not, we can't do that. It's not really subdivision, so we're in this middle area. That's why we're asking for relief on that, because for our folks to spend all that money, if they didn't get the adequate access, that's down the drain. This is not like a big subdivision where we know we're doing all kinds of surveying and adjusting and all that. So that's why we're asking for it. But again, it is before construction begins. So there's protection there, I think, for the town, that the engineer is going to pass on it and have to be satisfied before we can start any construction. And normally, he'd be monitoring it anyway.
And that's a condition, and I'll second.
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. 3. What else do we have? Let's, how about we jump to the,
Well, let's go right to number 2 next.
let's go to number 2. This is a draft condition of approval that would not be necessary if the approved plans were based on a stamped survey of land. Do I have a motion on that?
I'm just gonna ask-
The requested waiver is, I put it up here so you can see. The paved roadway shall be extended from its current terminus as depicted on a certain plan entitled Roadway Extension and Residential Plot Plan, dated April 18th, 2024, revised June 5th, 2024, prepared by Meissner Brand Corporation and on file with the planning board. Typically, when you issue approvals under subdivision plans, you would be making that approval based on survey plans, right? What's being proposed here is that you base your approval on the plan that's before you, which is not an instrument survey. You've granted a waiver of that instrument survey, so in that case, I think number 2 is probably appropriate, although again, that's within your discretion. But just explaining what this request is for, is
Yeah.
that accurate?
I think the value in number 2 is that it defines what the project is about. Without that, You know, I mean, that's sort of the plan of record right now.
You have to refer to a plan in your approval, so it's either a survey that you require, or it's what's being proposed here.
But, and so we expect the survey is going to show you a roadway, just as shown on the June 5th revision of the Meisner-Bremer plan, but with more detail, that'll be provided to Mr. Ryan based on what voted on number 1. But this gives us a starting point. You know, here's the existing lot, these folks want to build a house there, they want to build the roadway, and it's going to be a 22-foot wide roadway with this little bubble at the end, a small cul-de-sac. That kind of defines then what we're working with, gives us the guidance of what you expect it to look like, so that when we do all the survey work and bring it into Mr. Ryan, it's following that. Now, if it turns out something comes up, and because of some condition that's discovered, or something that Mr. Ryan decides is important enough to change that, we're going to have to come back to you. Because we'd be changing our plan from what you had approved. It might be that a change has nothing to do with adequate access. Might just be where you put the curb, or where you, something to do with drainage that doesn't really affect the access. But, you know, very often there are minor changes that get made in plans based on field conditions, based upon information that comes to light later on, and it becomes a decision or determination has to be made. Is this minor enough that the planning director might be authorized to pass on it? Or is it significant enough that it's felt that the board should look at it again? And you know, the ultimate responsibility is yours. So I would recommend you leave it in. I still think it's important to define what we're dealing with, and that if something comes back that's significantly different, then we'd want to come back to you, because you're approving the concept. If you approve this, you're approving that concept, and that's our guidance.
All right, so I have a motion and a second.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. All those in
Second.
favor?
Yeah, it's already been seconded?
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who seconded that, please? For my notes, Mr. Sheehan. Okay. Thank you.
Leaching structures.
You said these were right out of, Mr. Chairman, they said these were right out of Mr. Ryan's
Yeah.
notes.
They were right out of his notes to Mr. O'Neill after they had their meeting. And do we have those memos, Ed, with us now, the correspondence?
I think they're in the file, yeah.
Okay.
And actually, all the second and third page of those drawings are reflective of what Mark had requested.
Yeah.
Basically, it's
That's
saying
where
he
they
wants
came from.
detailed plans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
all
he
yours.
actually,
We're back to the same
those
thing.
drawings on the second and third page
Yeah.
he basically sketched out what he wanted, we incorporated what he wanted
Yeah.
into that plan. So we have to, of course, we'll provide him with, after the survey's done, and the depots are all done.
Yeah.
We'll have to give him a new set, and he'll have review.
Do I have a motion on number 5, leaching structures?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
6C above. I don't know about this one.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
A tough one.
Jeez. How about
Number 6?
7?
So these would be, just if I may, less waiver requests and more suggested conditions of approval. It seems to me, again, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to me that this was included on your list more as a draft condition of approval to make sure that the town engineer's comments are reflected in the final plan that's approved. This isn't necessarily a waiver of a requirement.
Yeah, I have to say, that's why we have engineers who are more familiar, and people like that, who are more familiar with the actual nitty-gritty of what size precast concrete structures we'll have in roadways. We took this again from Mr. Ryan's notes of what he wanted. And I think that if you vote for this as a condition, and then if we get to number 8, it's basically saying, except as, if there is a requirement in the subdivision rules and regulations on what those structures normally are, and you're voting a different you're voting the exact, the details we just provided, because that's what Mr. Ryan wanted for this project. He might want a different type in, say, a big subdivision with 20 lots. But for this one, this is what he asked us to do. So if it turns out that's a waiver, I think number 8 is a catch-all that covers anything that we haven't dealt with on that. So I think Ms. Dixon is right, call it a condition. I think all of these can be conditions that have to be, that would be attached to any adequate access determination.
Make a motion to approve number 6.
Second.
All those in favor, number 6?
Aye.
Aye. Number 7,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on that.
yes.
Completion of road and drainage work to be completed to satisfaction of town engineer prior to occupancy. Now, when you've always, when he says completion, he's not talking second course, right? Usually when you do a subdivision, first course goes down, they start building houses, they come in later with a final coat. He's not looking for a,
I don't think he's looking for final. 'cause
No, I don't think so either.
I
Just-
like doing my final when I do my driveway, nothing gets marked up and beat up by
Right.
landscapers and so forth.
just so we understand that, we're not asking for,
Certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, with a permitting, we'll probably have to, if this happens in January, of course, I'm not gonna do my
Yeah.
final until after April 15th.
yeah, you're not, so just so I think we're both on the same page.
Right, yeah.
And Mark, he knows you're not gonna put your final course down,
Not when I have frost on the ground, no.
no.
I suppose one way to look at it is it says, all road and drainage work shall be completed to the satisfaction of the town engineer.
So he says
So
it's
let's,
good.
yeah, if we're in a situation where, because of weather conditions, we can't put the top coat on, but the house is otherwise ready, the building commissioner signed off on the house.
Right.
Whatever it is, sometimes I think we get temporary certificates of occupancy
Yeah.
with the permanent conditioned on taking care of all those little details, such as the top course and so forth. We're okay with that, but as Mr. O'Neill says, if we're in a situation where we
Yeah.
can't put it in,
Mark will give you the blessing.
and Mark is okay with it, then
So we don't run
everybody's
into that
protected.
situation
We still
like
don't
up
have
on
the
hill
permanent
there behind the box
until he signs off.
that took 5 years, remember?
Oh, yeah.
What's the name of that street?
So I'll make a motion to approve number 7.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second on number 7. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Is that 4-0, Ernie?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I thought he said.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
All right, number 8, all subdivision requirements not reflected on proposed plan. It's a very broad statement, right?
I limited it to, well, I did limit it somewhat. I limited it to section 4, which is the provisions for submission and approvals, because you've effectively modified that by your vote on number 1. Minimum design standards, again, we're not looking at all of those separate standards. We're doing what Mr. Ryan has asked for, because this is all by itself, this particular project. It's not, doesn't involve any other lots or anything like that. Number 8, required improvements for an approved subdivision. That has to do with the construction of roadways that are likely, to become townways at some point. That's not, I don't think any of this section of Fales is a townway.
Well,
I'm sure it ever will be.
Yes, yeah.
I can't find a taking.
Someone,
a
please.
quick question, you said the owner's gonna own midway into the road, if not maybe the whole road?
Yeah.
So how do we take it as a street if she owns?
Because you
part
do,
here?
you take the interest that somebody has in a roadway.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you lay out a town way, the selectmen, with having it been approved by the town meeting, the selectmen make a taking of the roadway. So they end up, in most of those cases, they end up owning the roadway. But otherwise, there are plenty of streets in this town that are technically still private ways. They have never been formally taken by the town, but actually are plowed by the town. Other municipal services are there.
Right.
I mean, I lived in a neighborhood, my first house, they were paving the streets, and all of a sudden, somebody in town hall realized they had never done a formal taking of that neighborhood, even though the houses had been there for 30 or more years. And the paving stopped in the middle of the street. There was a line in the middle of a block, And then a couple months later, it all got voted. They came back as soon as they could and finished the paving. But we got great services, trash pickup, even though it's still a private way, technically a private way. We actually get plowed early because around the corner from me, an obstetrician lived, and he was getting called out at all hours of the night. So nobody knew it wasn't really yet a town way.
Okay.
But we're not, you know, this road, Mr. Ryan's not asking us to build this to the standards of an approved subdivision road. That would be back to, what, a 55-foot layout, which is excessive in most cases. Road, you know, how much pavement? We're seeing 28 feet in some of these streets. Sometimes it's cut back to 26, and all the rest of it, curbs and catch basins and street trees and all that. This is not one of those cases. So that's what you're waiving there, if you're waiving section 8. Those are normally required improvements.
Sarah, did you want to add anything about number 8? Or, I know you,
Yeah, I do think, however tedious it may be, I do think it warrants discussion of kind of individual requirements throughout the rules. You know, this language here, it says all requirements normally applicable to definitive subdivision plans, including, you know, and the applicants called out section 4, section 5, section 8, appendix A and B. But there's a tremendous amount of information just in those that are cited, but the language here reads to me is everything. So, you know, I'd be curious, you know, how the board feels about the environmental impact statement. That's been something that I believe Ms. Holmwood mentioned last time. Kind of all of your stormwater calculations and reports. Is that something that the board would wish to be provided to the town engineer for approval in addition to the plan?
Can we cherry
We've
pick
talked
these?
about wanting to require the perk tests. The rules also call out, you know, soil surveys. There's landscaping requirements, preservation of existing natural features. There's a lot of information there, and I would hate for anything that's important to the board to get lost, you know, when discussing kind of a very general and broad request here. Although I can appreciate the time saving.
But it's also, well, yeah,
there.
it'll save us all a lot of typing, but also, Mr. Chairman, most of what Ms. Dixon talked about is when we're talking about a multi-lot subdivision, where we're looking at, you know, what are the soil conditions? What's the environmental impact of a 5, 10, 15, or even 20-lot subdivision on the town, on the neighborhood? This is one lot that's been there for 100 and some odd years. And I think some of that stuff would be a bit of overkill. You know, we're going to put in drainage that will satisfy the town engineer. We're going to want to build a house there, but in terms of, you know, maintenance of natural features, we just want to build a house, and we don't want to cut down anything we don't need to cut down. But we're going to have to cut down some trees. So I mean, I can look at these and we can see, you know, we could go on for hours.
Right, hold on, one,
Yeah.
if I may, Mr. Hearn. Is requirements for environmental impact are only in play if it's a subdivision, correct? We don't do that for a single lot.
So this application's coming before you as a definitive subdivision, and if you think that something doesn't apply, and that, again, that's within your authority and discretion to
Right.
do, then you need to grant a waiver against that requirement.
Okay,
So
which is,
you have to approach this as though it is a definitive subdivision, and if, due to the unique circumstances of the proposal, any of
Okay.
these requirements you feel are not necessary, you have to take the proactive step of granting a waiver as requested by the applicant.
See, I looked at it that we,
so.
rather than miss something, we
Okay.
exclude everything we haven't specifically discussed.
So can we vote, can we take some of these and not take all of them in question 8?
It's up to you. This is just my recommendation. I haven't
Okay.
been in the position to review.
I know, because it's neither.
To review modifications administratively, it can be a challenge on the staff end to try to think about, was this what the board intended? right? Would the board have been comfortable with me granting this waiver? There's a lot here to just kind of say anything that's not currently reflected in the concept plan. That could put a lot of pressure on, frankly, the town engineer to say, did the planning board really want me to enforce things like replacement of mature trees in the right of way, or, you know, there's just so much information here. More specificity generally, again, on the staff side, I feel like is better because it's more direction from the planning board, and that there's no assumptions that need to be made, kind of what you intended to approve and what was a detail that just got kind of lost in the conversation.
Ernie, please.
Just, actually, Sarah kind of better, always speaks better than I do on these things. My only concern is, and I understand what we're trying to do here, my only concern is that we, by approving this the way it is that we are waiving something that Mr. Ryan might want or require, and then the applicant can say to Mr. Ryan, well, your planning board is the authority granting board here, and they waived it. So we don't have to do it. And that's my concern, is that, and I'm not saying that you guys got to do that or anything, but that's my only concern, and if I'm comfortable with the fact that Mr. Ryan will get everything he needs and asks for, I'm fine with it. But I just don't want somebody someday saying, well, the planning board waived that, so I don't have to do it. I don't care if you ask for it or not, I don't have to do it.
Do
you kind of follow me?
I follow that. A solution perhaps might be including in either this condition or as a separate condition, any matter, I had it a moment ago, any matter as to which the town engineer, any matter covered by the subdivision rules and regulations, as to which the town engineer and the applicant are not in agreement, shall be referred to the board for decision, notwithstanding the board's vote on condition number 8. That way, if Mark thinks of something, or something comes because of work what we're presenting to him, that he says, no, wait a minute, you guys, no, this is something nobody thought about, and we need to deal with it. And we say, we don't want to, we're not going to say what you just said, but I understand. We say, oh, yeah, nobody thought about that. And I mean, we get pages and pages of this stuff.
Yeah.
That would apply when we're sitting down doing a full subdivision plan. That instead it would go back to this board for decision, for resolution. Then you've still got the protection that if there is something that hadn't been thought about, then you've got another bite of the apple, and we can't proceed until either the board says to Mark, we're not worried about that, or you're right, Mark, we need to include that in the final, as an additional condition. You have retained, you're going to have continuing jurisdiction, as you do on most of your decisions,
I think
until the
that
whole
works.
thing is
I
built.
think that's a good idea. Not that on this one house, we're going to run into this, but.
No, but if there's something that we didn't think of and he didn't think of.
It's my only concern, and I think that would clarify it.
So what's your
That
solution?
basically, anything that the town engineer, number 9 would be that if the town engineer and the developer, disagree on some aspect of the plan or a requirement of the plan, if they can't mutually come to a conclusion, it could be referred back to the board for a final decision, and we would either approve it or deny it.
Would that be a public hearing?
I don't know if it would need to be. It'd probably be a minor modification. Minor modification, actually, you can handle that, but.
Right, so minor modifications typically are those
You're
that
gonna-
don't need to come back before the
Yeah.
planning board. In the event of a dispute about something
As far as a public hearing,
of significance, typically we do require those, but again,
At the
just as
tail
your
end?
condition, so I just would recommend being specific about this one, so we've got a roadmap to follow in the event that this does happen.
So a public hearing says, opens it up to notification and waiting for a decision, correct?
It allows the butters and the public to have the opportunity to attend and participate.
But as to that issue alone,
To that issue alone. It doesn't
So,
reopen the entire.
It doesn't reopen the whole
Right,
thing.
right.
No, no,
It-
no.
it
Just
gives
anything that
abutters
is-
the opportunity to be informed about
Okay.
this particular conversation.
I would make that motion, a waiver number 9, Mr. Chairman.
Could I
And
ask a
Joe,
question
yeah,
on that?
of course you can ask, Joe. I'll let you.
As you're making it, could we differentiate between minor modifications, just at the tail end of that, and things, it would either be referred back to the board, or if it's only a minor modification?
Well, this wouldn't be a modification, this would be a decision of a requirement. A minor modification would be moving a street pole 6 feet or something, and Sarah can handle those without a major modification always has to come back to the board. Minor modifications, the planner has the discrepancy.
Yeah, typically a
What's the
minor
discrepancy?
modification
What's
is
the word I'm
something
looking for,
that, it
Yeah.
decreases essentially the scope.
Yeah.
So, you know, the plan says you're gonna plant 5 trees in the parking lot and they wanna plant a 6th, right? That's not moving further away from the requirements, it's, you
Yeah.
know, more towards compliance, like that would be minor
Yeah.
probably.
The planner has the discretion to make those,
Things that are inconsequential, rose bushes aren't available, let's plant a hydrangea, I don't know.
Right,
It's
stuff like that.
Something like that.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that those types of matters, we're likely to be in agreement with the engineer anyway, to
Right.
present to the planner and say, hey, this came up and we're in agreement on how to handle it, and so long as it's not deviating from the policy determination you've made in a decision.
Right.
You know, but it's adding some little thing or correcting some little thing, but still hewing to the, you know, the real heart of the matter, that would be considered a minor modification. If I can read something, this is trying to put down what we've been talking about and what I suggested. Any matter arising under the subdivision rules and regulations that cannot be resolved between the town engineer and the applicant shall be referred to the planning board for review and determination at a public hearing dealing with such issue. So in other words, it's focusing only on that issue, and it'll be a public hearing, and frankly, the prospect of having to do that and go through that might make both sides figure out a way to resolve the matter to everybody's satisfaction. But that might be a way to do it, so that if something is left out that Mr. Ryan deems to be important, that there's a mechanism, either we do what he says, or if we can't agree on it between the two, between him and us, we come back here. And with a public hearing, people get notice. Frankly, I suspect what I just said, the prospect of having to go through more public hearings might produce a resolution more quickly.
Is that your motion?
that's my motion, exactly.
I'll second it then.
Can I-
Oh, Sarah has a,
You mentioned in your first iteration of that, including language saying notwithstanding approval of waiver number 8.
Right, so
Is that something
okay,
that
so
we could-
notwithstanding, why don't we begin it with that? Notwithstanding,
the other
are we
boss.
calling those, are we going to give all these conditions the same numbers we have in my draft? Or call them special conditions
Typically
as
that-
opposed to general ones?
Yeah, typically that is kind of a game time decision when we're writing the decision. Can we leave kind of that open-ended to make sure that what's being reflected
Or do
in
you
the
want to,
decision text
do you want to
is
tack this on to number 8?
specifically number 8? I mean, I think if you're going to approve number 8, it would be subject to this.
Why don't we say notwithstanding, this would be part of number 8.
This would be part of
Uh,
it. Okay. Notwithstanding the following.
Notwithstanding the foregoing,
Yeah.
any matter arising under the subdivision rules and regulations that cannot be resolved between the town engineer and the applicant shall be referred to the planning board for review and determination at a public hearing dealing with such issue.
Is that your motion?
Word for word.
That was good, Ernie.
I'll second.
Thank you.
I've got a motion and a second.
Even got some lawyer speak in there.
I'm gonna have to take a picture of this and send it to you.
Forego
Try to
and
follow
words
my
like that, you
handwriting.
know.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That was motion by Mr. Pechkowski,
Yeah.
seconded by, Mr. Sheehan? Thank you. I'm just trying to keep
And
track
that's
of this.
just an elongated number 8, correct?
Yeah,
So
we're
we're
adding.
waiving everything, but we have a little access to have a little control.
Unless
Yeah.
there's any parts that are mentioned here that you specifically don't wish to waive.
No, because it's not a, okay, I'm talking to myself.
She's batted 1,000.
That's the end of.
Fee?
You got
the
public.
list, yeah.
Are we
The
supposed to
fee.
do a fee waiver?
Thank you.
Or
Yeah, the fee
or
waiver.
talk about the fee?
I
Well,
would-
we'd ask for an approval of the main event here, adequate access. We've just been discussing
Well,
conditions.
we're gonna waive the fee.
Well,
because-
not so much waive the fee, but determine the appropriate fee.
Yeah.
The normal fee on a subdivision is $1,500 and then $750 for each additional, or $250 for each additional lot, something like that. And whatever it was, Ms. Dixon and I discussed it early on, that since this was in between, and an A&R is like $100, since this is not one, not the other, we settled on $250 just to have a
I was
filing,
gonna
so
say
the
that,
system
one
would
house,
allow it.
additional house, one house, 250.
We did $250, that's what we did.
Okay.
So it's up to you folks whether that is satisfactory, whether another number is satisfactory. I would argue that 1,500 is excessive for a single lot being developed, but it's your call.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, that the fee be reduced to $250.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I think, Rob, I think you got some
It's a public hearing. Would anyone from the public like to speak? Yes, please, sir, name and address.
Let me get out of the way here.
Michael Maffeo, 9 Earl Street. So my property abuts Fales Avenue, opposite where this proposed dwelling is. There was some comments about ownership of the road, but the properties that abut on the opposite side is mine, and the other property at the end of Fales, Jim Ahern's. So those would be butting on the opposite side. The other comment I wanted to make as far as ownership, I did come across a plan of easement, 1968, that shows this area, and it indicates that the area, it says the area to be taken for sewer and water purposes. There's no indication of whether it was actually accomplished, but there was an intent in 1968 for that section of Fales to be taken by the town. So just something I came across I wanted to mention because the topic did come up, so that was it.
Can we look and see if it was recorded?
It is, I got an unofficial copy from the Norwood County, the deeds, the office of the registry, and it is signed by the selectmen, September 24th, 1968, for the plan. Now, as far as the taking, that is not included here, but I can certainly show you
Well,
this.
that would be a whole new,
No, I can speak to the gentleman's comments. We're familiar with the easements.
Okay, through the chair, please.
Yes, I would. Mr. Chairman, those, can you get that plan there? I probably have it somewhere buried. Let me just look.
Okay.
That was to bring that down there, I think.
Yeah, it also indicates right here. That's what I was
Yeah,
talking about. It
right.
says
So the
to be
town,
taken.
the town took an easement, and it says plan of easement for sewer and water purposes. That's not the same as roadway purposes.
No.
There. So a roadway would have to be specifically voted by town meeting. I checked with the town clerk, and this part of Fales Ave has never been taken as a public way by the town, and she maintains the list of public ways. I put the question to her, and a couple of days later she got back, so I'm sure she checked wherever she needed to. The point I made about ownership of the roadway, the derelict fee statute generally states that when you have a subdivision, if the roadway is not specifically reserved by the developer, then since 1972, and it's retroactive in appropriate cases, and would be here, the right-of-way, or the roadway shown on the subdivision plan is deemed to be owned by the lot owners of that subdivision on either side to the center line, except that if the land on the other side is not part of that subdivision, then the lots are deemed to own the entire width of the roadway. Now, that's an ownership issue that is, still subject to people being able to go back and forth if the road was, say the road was built all the way through someday. People could pass back and forth if they had easement rights. On this roadway, on this Fales Ave, our lots, opposite our lots, the land, most of the land is not part of the roadway. I'm happy to show it to Mr. McPhail. You have it? Yeah, so this land is not part of the subdivision. These lots
But
are,
in this one it is, because it's already, this is our,
that's only an easement.
Earl Street isn't even shown on that.
Right, but
Didn't
that's,
exist.
the point is, these areas are not part of the Acorn Plat subdivision. So that statute deals with that. It doesn't make any real difference in terms of what we're doing here, but, the point is, nobody else is gonna use this road except us.
Sarah, please.
So town council has advised the board on other subdivision applications that the issues of land ownership, when paper streets are involved, is not the purview necessarily of the planning board
Right.
to decide upon. And you'll note that the applicant on the revised plan from June 5th includes a new note that reads, "This decision is merely a determination by the board that if the proposed roadway were to be built as proposed by the petitioner, it would provide adequate access in accordance with 3.6.2 of the subdivision rules and regulations to the lots shown on the plan. This decision should not be construed," and this is bolded, "as permission, authority, or license to the petitioner to construct the roadway as proposed. The petitioner may or may not have the right to do so, but such determination is beyond the authority of the planning board, and the board makes no finding therefore as to whether the petitioner has the right to build the road as proposed." I think that's significant, and I recommend keeping this note and actually including similar language as a condition of approval. That would preserve the ability, in the event of a dispute on land ownership, to proceed, notwithstanding planning board's approval of what was within its limited kind of jurisdiction of review here, which is really about the adequate access. I did suggest the addition of another sentence in my memo to this note that is consistent with more of a standard condition of approval that you usually approve. So I suggested that after sentence 1, it read, "The approval is limited to the jurisdiction of the planning board granted under the Norwood subdivision rules and regulations. Applicant must comply with all other applicable state and local regulations and permissions, including those relating to land ownership." And that was language that town council kind of reviewed and suggested may be appropriate.
See that up
for
top
that
there.
particular concern.
I would, if
Just
I may
wanted
speak to that, two things. The language that was just quoted from, that's on our plan, is straight out of your prior adequate access plans. I sent it over to the engineer and said, this is what's been on the other ones. I think to add the additional language telling us we have to comply with all laws relating to ownership adds a condition that is not within your jurisdiction. Simply by telling us we have to comply with other laws regarding ownership when that's not part of what you deal with. So why would you want to get involved in that? That's a private matter, and town council has pointed that out in the past. That's a private matter. So I would say that, well, I understand the spirit of it. I think there's the possibility that putting that condition in could put in doubt a decision of the board on this matter or on some other matter down the road. Gee, did they comply with the ownership? What do we mean by compliance with ownership laws? That's a matter of state law anyway. It's going to apply in terms of all kinds of anything, but it's not a matter for the planning board to determine.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just on that note, I think to Attorney Hearn's point, when we did Prospect Street, there was some paper streets involved up there, and it was made very clear to us through council at that point that there's nothing to do with us. And there was a civil matter, and these are civil matters, and the ownership and things like that really weren't part of our jurisdiction, if I'm making myself clear. But I think we had that issue with Prospect Street. I think there were 2 paper streets up there, at least 2.
I would be concerned that you're imposing a condition that is outside of your jurisdiction and could raise doubts down the road as to title and as to whether somebody has complied with every single law related to land ownership. And there are all kinds of laws that relate to
As
that.
proposed, the amended language would read, "This approval is limited to the jurisdiction of the planning board granted under the Norwood subdivision rules and regulations," which it sounds like we're in agreement on that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
This would simply
The first-
further
It's
clarify.
the first sentence of your proposed note. That's not a problem at all.
And that's really
That's
the
what
most,
we're here
that's
for.
the most important part.
Yeah.
That second sentence is typically a standard condition of approval for this board. But if the board doesn't see it necessary, it doesn't detract from the fact that all other applicable laws and regulations do apply. That is true whether or not we include it in the decision. But I think the clarification saying that this approval is limited to what is
Agreed.
subject to the
I
board's
agree with
jurisdiction,
that.
I think is appropriate. That's my recommendation.
So if the board wants to add an additional condition about the first sentence of the note being added, we have no objection to that at all.
Make a motion to that effect?
Second.
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. I want to be clear for the benefit of the neighbors. We're aware of that sewer easement that the gentleman referred to was when the town put in the lines that come down the hill, and then they used the right-of-way as the location of those pipes going along. Our streets, both town roads and the ones that are still private ways, often have easements in them like that, for sewer, for electricity, for telephone. You know, all the many closings I've done over the years, I've said to folks buying it, when I go over the title with them, I said, and here's an easement to the phone company, an easement to Edison. What's that? I said, well, if you want electricity and telephone service in your house and in your neighborhood, the utility companies all have easements. It means they've got the right to put those poles in what might technically be part of your lot, or to run the lines through the back or somewhere. They've got the right to do it. Same thing here. The town has the right to maintain their sewer line and their drain line in that roadway, regardless of who owns it, because they took that easement.
I'm just gonna pause for a moment. Is anyone else here from the public? Sir, please state your name and address. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael McKay. I'm at 17 Earl Street. I'm Mike's neighbor. Mr. Hearn, now you stated that Lot 50's been in existence for 100 years? Yeah. Okay. I have
Lots
a-
49 and 50, Mr. Chairman. We're dealing with 49 and 50 together.
But I don't see 49 on this plan, so were they combined? Were they merged?
We're merging as part of this, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, so that was just done recently?
No, we haven't.
Oh, so there is still a Lot 49, per se? I don't see Lot 49
The deed
anywhere.
will refer to lots 49 and 50. They exist on the 1920 subdivision plan. It's for convenience, it's being called 50 Fails Ave. I don't know what number will really be.
So they're gonna be merged together?
They will become one lot.
I see.
That's where we get the 10,000
Okay,
feet.
all right, good. So this applicant is only interested in building a single-family home? Is he limited to a single family? Could he put a two-family or a three-family? If he changed his mind?
The zoning allows for a single family.
I'm sorry?
So zoning isn't necessarily, the board is responsible for reviewing the roadway, the adequate access. What
Yeah.
they're not actually doing tonight is permitting
Okay, I
construction of a
understand.
particular
Okay.
structure. That would be the building commissioner.
Okay.
So if, just as an order of operations, if the planning board finds this plan is sufficient adequate access and allows construction of the roadway, that would presumably establish frontage for the lot in question.
Yeah.
At that point, the building commissioner, if he were to receive an application for, a building permit to build a home, would be able to say, yes, there's frontage because there's a adequately constructed roadway, proposed to go here. But the board isn't actually reviewing kind of an application for the construction of a structure at this time. But to answer your question, the zoning in this area would only allow for a single-family home. at
It's
this
a
point.
S. This is S.
It's,
No, because,
Single residence.
well, in the backside of it is, there are three families.
Right, those are
I
pre-existing.
think Attorney Hearn,
I can answer that if it helps, Mr.
Please,
Chairman.
please,
Um,
Mr. Attorney Hearn.
This is general residence, which allows single and two-family houses.
Right.
Except that a two-family requires 15,000 feet of area. So only a single family can be built as a matter of right on this, and the rest would require a variance. The properties along Washington Street predate the current zoning. They were allowed years ago, and they, I don't know all the details of how they got them, but they think they've been around so long, they predate, the zoning changes over time. We're in a general residence zone. We need 10,000 feet to build a single-family house. We would need 15,000 feet. We don't have it to build a two-family. Our clients want to build a single-family house. And that's all, if we went into the building inspector and asked for a permit for a two-family, he'd deny it. And we'd have to go to the zoning board, and they're not inclined to give variances for that these days.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hearn. So the lots next to the proposed lot 50, lots 36, and I suppose the one next to that again would be 35. Could those be divided into a single lot, just like 49 and 50?
Do we know what the
You follow me?
square footage is? Do we know the size?
That's a good question.
Is that on the upper review?
Is that?
only if an applicant came forward.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with what we're doing tonight.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but hypothetically, looking down the road, because right next to it is also Bertha Street, which is a paper road. If someone else wanted to do the same thing, could they have access from Bertha Road and to build there as well?
Maybe.
Possibly.
Is there anything before the board for that area now for further development?
Not that I'm
All
aware
right,
of.
now, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone online that would like to speak, being a public hearing? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor to close the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
No discussion?
Well, you can discuss.
Okay.
You can discuss before we vote.
I just wondered if Carlo and Mary Vendetti's, it's in our package. Is it on?
Talk about the snow removal?
No, about,
Noise.
yeah, trees. I can't go without complaining about trees.
Ms. Holmwood, I could make a suggestion, maybe we make a motion that all the correspondence be entered into the record.
Good idea, Mr. Petrikowski. I like that idea. Okay, I'll make that, you making that motion? Or
I'll
am I
make that
making-
motion. That all the, we have a motion on the floor already to close the public hearing. I'll retract my motion
And
for
all-
the purpose of entering these into the,
You voted on the closing.
oh,
We
no, we
didn't-
did not vote.
We didn't
stopped.
take the
No,
vote.
because Ms. Holmwood had a question.
I had a question, so we
Second.
didn't close it yet.
We haven't voted yet. So I will retract my motion to close the public hearing for the sole purposes of making sure that all correspondence is entered into the record,
Second,
A motion and a second.
to enter the correspondence into the record.
okay, thank you.
All those in
All those in
favor?
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're closed. Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the adequate access plan, taking into consideration the 8 waivers. I think there's 8, or did we make it 9?
Aye.
9.
9 waivers.
9 waivers.
Are they waivers or conditions?
They are waivers. We have the conditions, we don't have any conditions on this.
No, the list was waivers and conditions.
Yeah, it was waivers and conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could I make a motion to
Second.
approve the plan?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve.
With the waivers.
Mr. Hearn, do you have a concern?
I had 8 with the added language, and then what was your?
Nine was the
addition to
fee.
add that sentence?
Yeah, to the notes.
The sentence was part of waiver / condition number 8, the 9th is the fee,
The fee.
the fee.
Dropping the fee to $250.
Make that number 9, okay.
Yeah.
Did we vote? Okay.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Approved.
Well, nothing, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of May 20th.
Second.
On the minutes, I have a motion and a second. Did you get a chance?
Yes, yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What else you got?
Adjournment. Mike is
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Nighty
Great.
night.
Thank you. Good night.